create component, right? So we discussed about what is component and design component using inline technique, right? We learned how to design a component using inline technique. Actually, we are learning adding component manually adding the component. So how to design component by using inline technique, all the basics we learned. And how do we start our project? So we are using ng serve project is equal to our project name. Already we kept our component in the startup, right? We done this, and this is our project. In this we designed a component. The component name is home. In the home component we have selector app home, template, the heading, and styles, some colors, right? And we have some property called title which we are accessing and using here. Now after creating component, we have to register the component. Components are registered in which location? Declarations. So declarations, this is where we declare the component. After that, we have to configure the component in the startup home component. Which component you mentioned in the startup, we have to define that in index HTML. In index HTML, it starts with app home. This is selector name. Now, once you compile by using ng serve command, we compiled here successfully. Once compiled, now you start your project. Actually, it is running on HTTP localhost. It is 4200. That is the port number. Default. Actually, you can change port numbers and all. I will discuss about those commands in later stage, how to handle them. So initially, let's open browser, and here we will access localhost and 4200. It should start with our shopping. This is the component that we designed. So in this component, so we are just having a heading, and we are just having some paragraph, and we are applying some styles, and we configured those styles here. So everything just what we learned yesterday. Just we are starting the component and we are displaying the component. This is one technique of designing component. That is what we call as inline, right? Now, today we will see another technique, how to design component. So what is good and bad about inline technique? So first point is inline technique. Inline technique reduces the number of requests for component. Because only one file is present, the number of requests will reduce. So what will happen if you reduce number of requests? It improves the page load time. Page load time will improve if you can reduce the number of requests. But what is drawback? Drawback is, so it is not easy to extend. It is not easy to extend, and it is tightly coupled. It is tightly coupled. That means separation issues will come. Separation issues will be there because all are present in one place. If I want to extend my markup, if I want to extend my logic, everything is done in one file. So this becomes actually heavy on component. it becomes heavy on component because everything is present in one place. So then when to use this? What is the ideal situation when we need these kind of components? So the question here is when we have to use inline components. When we have to use inline components. So the answer is, so if you want a component with stable functionality without regular extensions then better use inline technique. That is what actually the concept. So inline documentation technique is good if you want a component with stable functionality. It will not change. Always it will have the same work to do. And very important is we don't need regular extensions. That means we don't need to change, we don't need to extend. Then better we can go with this inline techniques. So next important is how we can design components using code behind technique. We will see how we can design component using code behind technique today. Code behind technique. What is code behind technique? Generally, in code behind technique, what happens? So component is designed using individual files. What are those individual files? .html file for markup, right? And .css for styles, and .ts for functionality. And we have spec.ts for test. So the last one is optional. We don't need that every time. Only when we need some extensions testing, then we have to use them. So every component comprises of three major files. One is the HTML, CSS, and TS. Let's see how we can use this. So how to design a component using code behind technique. That means cleanly separating everything. So first we will go to our project, and in the project, let's go to the components folder. We added a components folder. In the components folder, because this time already there is home actually, but this time we want 3 files for every component. So better we will maintain a subfolder. So I will create another folder here. In the components, for every component, better create a folder. So I'm creating a folder, some login. Now in this folder, we can add all the 3 files required for component. So first file, add file. So we are adding login.component.ts. So second file in this is login.component.html. There is no order in adding your files. Another file is login.component.css. Okay. Once you added these 3 files, now we have to design the logic in TS file. How to create it as a component. So in TS file, import, we have to import what? Component from Angular Angular core. We have to import the component from Angular core library. Okay, next we have to define export. We can use class and the class name. So this is login component, that is the class. And in this, I just keep a title. So in that I define user login. That is just title defined. Later we will learn functions and all those things. Now, this is still not a component. Then we will use a marker. What is that component? This component contains metadata, which is an object. Every component mandatory have a selector. And what is the selector name? Selector name app login. That is the selector name. App login is the selector name. After this, now this time we are not designing markup here. We are bringing markup from another HTML file. Then we have to use template URL. Template URL. Template URL, you can see this template URL, you can observe it is a string type. That means just you have to mention the path and name of the component HTML. And how do we define the path? Usually, if you want to access any file present in the same folder, we use /. In that, what is it? login.component.html. That's how we need to define. So we have two options, template and template URL. If you are designing inline markup, template. If you are bringing markup from another file, template URL. After that, now styles. Styles also comes from separate file. So styles URL. Style URLs. This is an array type actually. You can see this is an array. It is a string array. It is a string array because you know that a web page can use multiple style sheets. It's not that style sheet should be only one. You can use multiple style sheets. So in that case, you can add more than one style sheet and you can use those style sheets here. So as of now, we have only one, but it is to be written like an array of what type? String. In that /, what is it? Login.component.css. That's how we define. Now your component is ready. Now component is ready, but markup is empty, styles are empty, nothing is there. Now let's go to the HTML. Now here we need to design HTML. Here you need to remember one point. Generally, when you are designing, you should know about two important things. Presentation comprises of one is view and another one is partial view. Presentation contains view and a partial view. Usually in any web design, it contains views and partial views. View is nothing but actually it is a complete markup document. It is a complete markup document. And partial view means, so it comprises of, that means it is just a portion of document. It is not complete document. It is just a part of document. That means actually what is our view here? So view is our index.html page, index.html. So this index.html is having all the document structure. Am I right? The complete document structure is present here. So in that document, we have to render components. In that case, your your component user interface is login.component.html. Here you don't need complete HTML document structure. You just need what you want to render in body. That means you just keep a container. Here you design everything with your HTML. That means already index is having complete HTML structure. In that HTML structure where your component is rendered in body, then how you will design your login component HTML? You will not use doc type HTML, am I right? Why? Because already document structure is there. So this is not a view, this is a partial view. That means you just need to mention what you want in body, because already structure is there in index page. This is going to go into body. In that case, just you have to design with some containers. So in the container, I'm just giving traditionally a login screen. So I'm just using, you know how to design a traditional. So here I will put a heading. Here I can access the binding expression and I can bring the title there. Title is present in another file, but it is accessible to this because you linked that here inside template URL. So then you can access and use that here. You can use here. Now we are just designing a simple div and we have a label. So, and we have so option like user name, and we have a div. So we have a text box. Input type is text like. Now we have another container. In this we have a label. So this is password and a container. So we have input type is equal to password. You know the tradition how to design a form, all right? And let's keep this everything, all this part I will keep in a form. Okay, in a form we are configuring everything. Let's keep another div and we will keep a label. Here label not required. I will just use a button say login. Now this is the screen. Here we have user name is username, and you know the tradition label should work for which one? Username. These are all basic rules of HTML. Name is password and this label should work for password. That is the basic rules we need, right? Now we just created a simple login form, but still appearance effects are not perfect. We can add some styles and define them. So here what I will do is for this div, I will give a class called box. I will give the class as box. Okay. Now currently you can see this component CSS is empty. It's not having any styles. Let just we designed the HTML and the TS. Let's keep this in the startup now. So first we have to go to app module.ts. In this, in the declarations, first we have to import our component. Which one? Login component. It automatically imports that login component. Now we need to keep this in the startup. Where? In Bootstrap. Which component? Login component. Now one more work we have to do in index. In index we have to change this. What is it? App login. We need to define app login. Now your browser is ready. Already in the background it is compiled. It is running. So just we will refresh here and that login is available. So we just created a simple login, but presentation effects, everything are not done. We will do that. So here we are configuring a simple component. In this we will add some styles now. So let's go to the component CSS. In that we have a class called box. For that box, I will use display flex. I will use justify content center, align items center, and height I will give 500 pixel, and this makes it center. And we will do one more work here. So what is that? Is wherever form is present. So for form, we will give border as 2 pixel solid, some gray color border. And I will give border radius as some 20 pixel. I will give some padding as 20 pixel. That's it. So it will give that appearance there. So we are just designing a simple component with some markup, with some styles, and with some dynamic property. Still functionalities and all these things are to be taken into the consideration, right? We will see them. But this is a component designed by using which technique? By using code behind. In code behind technique, we will have separate files. So we have the HTML, the CSS, and TS. So this is the example, what we have done. So first, add a new folder into project, into components. Into components. Already we have created a folder components, and the folder is login. Then add following files into login. What are the files? Login.component.ts, login.component.html, login.component.css. I will give the code here, login component.ts. In that we added this logic. I will just copy this. Yeah. So that is the logic in that. Next, we have login.component.html. In this, we added this presentation. I will copy that here. Okay. Now another login.component.css, component.css. So I am using this style here. I'm just adding some styles. Okay. This is rest of things no need to tell every day. That means after designing component, register in app module, keep it in Bootstrap, change it in index. These are traditionally daily things. Every day until we learn the concept of routing, we will have to design and test every component individual. Later we will learn about routing, where we can design one screen. From there we can access all components and use them. As of now, every time which component you design, you have to keep it in startup and test it, right? This is second technique. One technique inline, another one is code behind. Now when you are designing components, we can use the styles. I will show you now how we can use Bootstrap with Angular. Bootstrap CSS with Angular. How we can use the Bootstrap CSS with Angular. So because when you are designing a web page, a lot of styles and effects we can use from Bootstrap. Bootstrap is mandatory for any web development, you know, right? Twitter Bootstrap, you can use any of them. Bootstrap is better than all, and lot of third parties also there, like Angular materials and all, which you cannot use until or unless you finish complete concept of components, events and all. That is the reason in the beginning of designs and all, we will just go with Bootstrap. Then we will use Bootstrap with combination of other third parties also. As of now, how we can set up Bootstrap for our project, how to use Bootstrap CSS so that we can make the presentations effective. Remember, Angular is not just Angular. Angular is used in the front end for web development. So you cannot tell that I am an Angular developer, but I am not good in HTML, CSS. That's not great, right? It's like joke, right? What you are talking about. You are an Angular developer, you are not good in CSS, Bootstrap, HTML. That doesn't satisfy at all, right? Because an Angular developer's role is to build the front end interface effective. And Angular just a framework. It needs good knowledge of CSS, HTML, and Bootstrap and other third-party presentations. Without that, you can't survive or do any work given to you in Angular in real time. You cannot. So that is the reason you must have good experience in this, right? Now we will use Bootstrap. How to set up Bootstrap for Angular? Let's see. In order to use Bootstrap CSS with Angular, first step, you install Bootstrap into project. How to install Bootstrap? Just you open your workspace, right? In terminal, you have to run the command npm install bootstrap and save. And currently the version of Bootstrap is 5, which is very latest version. Bootstrap 5 version is completely different from the previous Bootstrap 4. Several new things are here. So if you are installing Bootstrap 5, latest version, which is 5, so I will give here Bootstrap 5, right? Yeah. Then Bootstrap 5 comes with Bootstrap icons. So we can directly install Bootstrap icons also. Icons. So earlier developers have to depend on Font Awesome like icons. So for icons, now you can use Font Awesome, or you can just go with Bootstrap icons, which are readily available from Bootstrap 5. First, you have to install these two in your project. So let's see. Go to our project, open the terminal, and see in one terminal, actually, my project is running. That means it is compiled and it is running. So don't disturb this terminal, because if you stop, then again you have to recompile every time. So keep it in the background, because when you do modifications and save, automatically it will compile and it will refresh the output for you. So don't disturb this. Take another terminal. That means you can just click on this plus and you will get another terminal. And in this terminal, so here we have to install. You can install directly for workspace. So npm install bootstrap save. Okay. So we are downloading and installing Bootstrap. Okay. And we need Bootstrap icons. npm install bootstrap icons, bootstrap -icons, save. So we are installing Bootstrap icons also here. We are installing Bootstrap and bootstrap icons. Fine. Now Bootstrap is successfully installed in your workspace. That means you can use anywhere in your projects. Now once it is installed, now you need to set up that here, right? Yeah. These are basic npm commands. So save is compulsory to do. I hope if you don't know, from HTML, CSS basics onwards, you might have learned these npm commands. When you install any another command which is a dependency, then it will reset all the dependencies. So without resetting the dependencies, if you want to keep existing and install the new ones, then better always use save. If you don't use save, If any another library you installed which is having an existing dependency, it will reinstall that existing dependency. Without reinstalling that existing dependency, I hope every web developer basically knows that he need to save. So it is not mandatory, but later you will face problem if any dependent libraries are installed. It will reset the previous one. And if you are using the previous one anywhere, it will reset every time. You have to reconfigure every time. These are very basic things people learn in HTML and CSS and all these onwards, because web development basics, how these npm commands are used. Okay, right. So here the point, once we set up, we installed. And second point is, after installing Bootstrap into project, now we have to import and configure Bootstrap CSS files globally for project. You have to import and configure Bootstrap CSS files globally for project. Where we have to do that? So in styles.css, so you have to go to the project folder. In that, already we discussed one in src, there will be a styles.css. In src you have styles.css. I told you that this file contains all the global styles, right? In this, we have to import these two files. One is Bootstrap icons, another one Bootstrap. How do we import? We have to use @import. @import. CSS files are imported in another CSS file by using import command, right? We have to use import. And import, where is the file? You know the location of Bootstrap CSS. Whenever you install anything through npm, it will go into node modules. So we have to get from .. because currently we will come out of src. Again .. you will come out of the project. Again .. now you have node modules. You know how to write the paths, right? Now don't ask what is .. So you know how to write the path in HTML for accessing any resource using the resource .. path references. Already you are familiar. Now here we have Bootstrap. In that we have dist. In that we have CSS. In that we have bootstrap.css. This is one file. You know the Bootstrap files location, where they are present. This is the location of Bootstrap CSS. Another one, we have to import another .. node modules. In that, Bootstrap icons. Bootstrap icons are present in font Bootstrap icons.css. Bootstrap icons and Bootstrap, these are ready. That means now your project is ready to use Bootstrap. Okay, if project is ready to use Bootstrap, let's see here. Some changes already happened. Some changes are nothing but font style little bit changed here, because Bootstrap by default uses a font called Roboto. Roboto is the font which is used by Bootstrap. Now we can apply the Bootstrap effects directly here. Let's apply. Let's go to the login.html. Here you can use your Bootstrap now. That means now what we will do for label, for this div, I will put a class margin bottom 3. Second class margin bottom 3. That means every category I am giving some space. So class margin bottom 3. Now you can see some space between every category. Username, password, login, some vertical space we assign. Then you know, as per the rules, label will have a class called form label. Text box will have a class called form control. Labels will have the class called form label, and passwords also will have the class called form control. You know all Bootstrap classes. And usually buttons will have the class called btn primary, and w100 is width 100, right? Now you can see we are applying Bootstrap and it is there. That means we designed a simple login screen here, a login screen with some Bootstrap effects added. Now I can go here, I can, because we are using Bootstrap icons, here beside the title in heading, I will put a span class bi person. Bi person, these are Bootstrap icons, right? And this is the Bootstrap icon. We are adding a just Bootstrap icon here. Now we are making the presentation so better. Angular people cannot say that I will design a login, but you apply styles, right? So you need to design, because when you go to interviews, once you qualified in the first round, when they give a practical test, they will give you some screen designs and they will say that design this and send us. They will give 2-3 days time, and for that data, they will say that data is in our API. Use that data and design this. Filtering, sorting, searching, grids, adding, inserting, deleting operations with good interface you have to design. Interviewer will be never satisfied with just your functionality, right? He will be never satisfied with your functionality. You have to achieve the screen exactly how they asked you. You need a good presentation skills, right? These are very important at Angular, React like developers are need to be very strong in presentations. So this is a simple concept how we can use Bootstrap. So I installed Bootstrap. I have to import those files. Where is this styles present? In src folder, right? We have to configure the styles and define the styles, right? Now see here, let's go and copy this. Our TS file, CSS file, no change, right? First, I will go to styles. We imported this too now. I will copy that. I will keep this here. Okay. Then next step, you can apply Bootstrap icons and classes for components. Okay. You can do that. Bootstrap icons will have BI and BI icon name. Am I right? Icon name will be there. Icon will be there. This is for icons. General classes, we have Bootstrap classes will have others. If you have any need of reference, you can go to official website, get bootstrap.com, right? From here, you can get the official help about Bootstrap. So that means if you can learn what classes are there, how to apply them and use them. So I hope already you people all know about Bootstrap. Huh? So example, now just login dot component dot HTML. No change in TS and CSS file. In HTML, I made some changes. In HTML, traditionally, I used this Bootstrap. Right? Actually, for form, you can see I am removing this border and all. For form, I am removing that border. So it is like this. I can apply that also using this. Like for form class, we can give border. We can give border 4 or 3. Yeah, we can give border primary. These are the effects for the border, how we can define, right? So primary, and here we can add what else? Padding, padding 2 or 3. We have rounded, and we have rounded some 2 or 3 size. Then you can see directly we are applying that using Bootstrap. right? We are directly configuring that with Bootstrap itself. So this is basic one. Let's copy this, and this is example of the login component HTML file, right? With Bootstrap, how to design and work with them. Okay. Technically, this is one option how we can configure and define. This is creating a component. Two ways you are perfect now. One is inline technique, another one code behind technique, and how do we make it effective using Bootstrap. Hereafter, every day we will use Bootstrap regularly in our examples design. Okay, now you have done this manually. Now we will see how we can add components using CLI commands. How to add components using CLI commands. So till now we learned how to add components in using manual approach, adding the files and all. What is the advantage of CLI commands? CLI commands advantage, you just give a command. According to the command, it will generate everything for you. I told you that we call this mechanism as scaffold. We call this as scaffolding. Let's see how and what are the commands for generating component. Lot of CLI commands are there. We are discussing the commands for generating component, right? For that, actually, we have to use the command. So one is ng generate component. ng generate component. So we can use component. So we can use shortcut and component name. So you can give any name. You can use shortcut NGGC and name. Any name you can give for that. So this is the command. So which generates. So what it will do is it will generate all files. All files. That means how many files? 4. The HTML, the CSS, everything it will generate. Now, not only generating, what it will do is it will register your component in app module also. That means it will register, but not keeping in Bootstrap. In Bootstrap, you have to set. So it will add a component and it will generate all the files and it will register in app module. So we will see one option here. You can use one option here, -- dry run. Actually, dry run is a flag. It is used to just test your command. That means you can test your commands by using dry run. If you use the flag dry run, then your command will not actually generate. It will just show you preview. That means you see now, we will not generate here. Open the terminal and where to generate component, you have to open that location first. So go to components. So this is the components folder. What we have to do, right click on components folder and open in integrated terminal. That means you have to open the components location first. You cannot add component anywhere you want. You have to make sure that you are adding in app folder. But in app, we are maintaining our components in a separate folder. We will open that location, right? So here, where to generate these commands, we have to generate these commands in app folder, right? So that means we have to use in your project path, right? You have to use your project path. In that we have a app, in that components. That is the location where you have to run the commands. So ng generate component and component name, suppose some register component, and you can use this dry run as a flag. I will show you all the commands. First, I am showing you this dry run as a flag. So this is nothing but, you see now, let's run this. Yeah. Now you can observe here, I am using the command just for your convenience sake. Yeah. Here, ng generate component, and component name is register. And if I hit enter, it will really create it. No, I don't want to create. As a developer, before creating anything, first I should know what it is going to do at all. Blindly, I cannot create something without knowing where it is going to affect, because in a project, lot of dependencies will be there. You cannot simply add or generate something without knowing where it is going to affect. So in order to know what it is really going to do before it's do it, then you have to use dry run command. So this dry run, what is the purpose of this dry run is, it will show you the command here. So it will show you the command. These commands are little changed now. In earlier versions, we have to use these commands in camel case. We have to use in camel case, dry run. Now with hyphen, we need to do that. That's the reason, once check if you are watching any YouTube videos or online tutorials, make sure that that is about Angular 14. Because if they are telling about some other version older of Angular, these command syntax change. Their way of writing change little bit. Now you see what happened. See, it is showing dry run means no changes were made. No changes were made. But see what it has done. It created 4 things and it updated 1. What are the 4 things it created? It created HTML file, spec file, TS file, and CSS file. And how much initial space required for those files also it will show. Remember, is it created? Let's go to the components. In the components, register is not there. Am I right? That means it's not created. Dry run means it is just showing you a preview. Before creating, it is showing you that I will create this. And see, it is having another update in app module. That means it is creating 4 files and updating in the app module. Where it will update? In the declarations. It will automatically add your component. But Bootstrap, you have to set up. You have to set. So this is generating a component directly. So this is generate component with all files. Okay. To generate component with all files, this is the command you have to run. Second one, if we want to generate component without CSS, I don't need a separate CSS because I am using Bootstrap. I don't need a CSS until or unless I need externally. That means then what we have to do is ng generate component and component name register. And here you can use inline style. Inline style is equal to true. Inline style is equal to true. Inline style is equal to true. Inline style means styles are not maintained in separate file. Styles are maintained in the same file. That means a separate CSS file will not be generated. And every time I will add this dry run currently, just to show you the commands, right? But later, if you want, you remove the dry run, it is created. Okay, let's see now. Here, inline styles. Okay, inline styles. So let's see here. I am using the command now, ng generate component register, and inline what style is equal to true. And here we will put a dry run. We will add dry run also regularly just to see the commands. And you can see only 3 files are generated. Now there is no CSS file generated. That means it is generating HTML, it is generating spec, and it is generating STS. So it is not generating any CSS file. That is inline style is equal to true. You have another option, generate component without HTML. Because I am planning to write my HTML inside the component itself, markup directly using template, then ng generate component register, we have to use inline template. Inline template is equal to true. Inline template is equal to true. It will not generate an HTML file. It will not generate an HTML file. Now, do you have a question if I don't want both? How to do? Obviously, you have to merge all these commands. Na? If I don't want CSS and HTML also, then obviously we have to use both options, right? Inline template true, we can use. Inline style also true. There will be no HTML, there will be no CSS. But in this case, it will be having CSS. Because currently we said only template true. That means HTML is not generated. So we will see ng generate component register. What we have to do, inline template. Inline template is equal to true. So I will use a dry run. Inline template is equal to true. Now you can see here there is no HTML file. CSS is there. We don't want the CSS also. To this command, add one more. What is it? Inline style. Inline style is equal to true. Then you can see only 2 files will be generated. One spec file, another one TS. You have to use all combination of commands. Another is we don't want, so generate component without test file. Without test file. So without CSS file and without HTML file, without test file. So without test file, test cannot be inline. Test cannot be inline. Test can be only in a separate file. So if you don't want, then ng generate component register. Here we have to use skip test. We have to use skip test. That means no test file will be generated for you. So test file is not required until or unless you know the testing, right? So later we will learn about testing, then we can add this file. So initially skip test. So what we do, ng generate component, and here we are using register and skip test. Skip test is and here we will use dry run. And you can see all 3 files are generated, only the test file is not there. The HTML, the CSS and TS files are there. So you want to create an inline component, then how? You know the meaning, what does means. That means how to generate. Suppose if anyone asks like how to generate inline component using CLI commands. Inline component means everything will be only one file. Na? You know the answer. So ng generate component register. What we have to do, skip test, that is one. We have inline style is equal to true. We can use inline template also is equal to true. This will generate inline. That means only one file will be generated. What is it? TS. All the code, whatever required, it will create. You will see that. We will see now. This is one option. Another one is actually, we have another option is generate component. So without individual folder, without individual folder. That means actually, whenever you generate ng generate component register, and I will give as a dry run, and you can see this will generate the component register, and see all these files are present in register folder. That means in components, a separate folder is created by name register. In that register folder, it is having all these 4 files. Understood? That means a separate folder is automatically generated for you, just like we created a login folder. We don't want that folder, so directly it should be created. Actually, we can do that. ng generate component. So we have register, and we will use flat. We use the flag as flat. And here we will define the option. What is it? Dry run. Of course, this flat is used mostly when you are generating only one file, right? As of now also you can directly do. Then what it will do is directly it will add them in components, right? There is no separate folder created for register. All these files are stored directly in components. Directly all these are created into the components. A separate register folder is not maintained. Usually we do that when we are adding any component inline and we don't want a separate folder. Actually, already we done that for home. Am I right? For home, we haven't created any folder. Directly we added into component. For login, we created a folder. There we maintained all the login files. So these are all the commands that we have to do. Now, finally, you want to create, then create ng generate component. What is it? Register. I will skip tests. Okay. That means I will not create a test file. And I am not using dry run now. If I am not using dry run, they will be created really. You can see automatically the register component is created. A folder is created. And you can see in this folder now. So when I expand the folder, you can see all 3 files are there. The CSS, HTML, and TS. When we go to the TS file already have the same logic. That means everything is scaffolded. Just you need to make changes, but you will see a lot of new things here. Constructor, you know, every class will have a constructor. And what is this ng on in it? Actually, it is a lifecycle hook. We call lifecycle hooks. Later, we will learn about those lifecycle hooks. As of now, you can just ignore them, put whatever you want there. Suppose ignore this, you will learn about those hooks later. Just what you do, you put your properties, what you want, title, what is the title you want, some register. So title, some I will give string, okay? Register new user like this. That is a string. And after you do that, let's go to HTML. Now you may be wondering, like, we learned TypeScript, we are using TypeScript. Why we are not mentioning data types and all? Because traditionally we learned that in TypeScript, property, public, data type. Am I right? We are not doing that. Why we are not doing? It's not mandatory, because already we learned that TypeScript uses a type inference mechanism. What is type inference? Type inference means according to the value you have initialized, its data type is fixed. Already I told you that TypeScript have type inference mechanism. That is the reason you will see several developers using TypeScript. They don't have an habit of declaring the data types, because even in TypeScript configuration file, it is set to declaration is not mandatory. Declaration is not mandatory means its data type definition is not mandatory. But generally we will write later when we are expecting these values dynamically, because when we are expecting values dynamically, we cannot keep it empty like this, right? And we cannot initialize some dumb values. What we do, we will mention the type as what? String, and we will mention the type as null or null, because you know union types. Why we use null? Because we are expecting the value dynamically, then we have to use null. That is how we initialize. So that is not required when you are directly initializing some value. You are just declaring, not initializing, then you need all this, right? If you are initializing any value, then you don't need them. That means here, and if you don't give any access modifier, then by default it will be treated as public only. Default is public. Here once you initialize, that's okay. Register new user, that is initialized. Now you go to the HTML file, and in that just a paragraph is there. Then here you can customize your content. Okay, div, and in that heading, in that I will get the title and I will use it here. CSS is empty, nothing is there in CSS, nothing is there in HTML, just only paragraph we modified. This TS is completely generated. And go to app module, you will find that it is registered here. Just what you want. If you want to test it, then we have to use register component, and here we have to go to index, and obviously as per the tradition it will be what? App register. Whatever the component you given, you will have it. If you have doubt, you can see the selector. What is the selector? What is same component name is defined here. So that is done. Now you can see it is so working for us. Register. Obviously alignments, indentation will be a problem, because Bootstrap requires containers. We have to use a container, then you can get the alignments and all perfect. So we have container fluid. When you are using Bootstrap, you need to keep them. Now this is so the basic how we can add a component using commands. So we have learned all the techniques of adding component manually and using CLI, inline components and code behind components, how we can add the components and how to manage. Now once, and we saw how to add Bootstrap, make it effective. Now once you are good in adding component, the first thing you have to learn is the important concept, how to design a user interface with multiple components. How to design user interface with multiple components. This is our first task. That means we will try to design this Netflix page. So we will try to design this Netflix page using the components mechanism. We will try to design this. Now in this, lot of bootstraps are required. I will just give you the layout, design layout, and why here components is reusable. That means you see here we have register, and this register, ready to watch, enter your email, this is your register. And when I scroll down, this register is again here. That means what? We design again and again? No, we design a component and reuse everywhere. And when you look at this Netflix, it is a component based completely. We have header, we have main, we have register, In the main, we have register. And can you tell what is the name of this one? Frequently asked questions. Can you name this component? When I click, it will open. And when I click the second one here, first one will collapse. Can you name this component? What it is called as? If you have knowledge of Bootstrap, this is called as accordion. It is an accordion component. So we design such things using accordion. This is an accordion component. So, and we have a footer component, right? We will try to design this kind of interface with our components knowledge first, right? That we'll see in next session. Tomorrow we will do that. Okay. In tomorrow's session, we will discuss how to design this screen by using the components hierarchy. Okay. Tomorrow we'll continue that.